Yeah. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 8 a.m. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Hopefully this class didn't stress you out much this weekend. We'll see. I don't know. Today we're going to talk about some interior stuff. Well, some of it can be classified exterior as well, but we're going to talk about placing 3D text on surfaces, decals, using images, pictures you can place on walls, things like that. We're going to utilize the paint tool today, and then look at some more dimensioning tools. And then jump into hopefully making at least one sheet today and a custom title block. And if we have time, we'll talk about how to print and get your stuff out of Revit so that you can utilize them on your boards and things like that. So it sounds like a lot, but hopefully it'll only take a few minutes to go through each one of these. And then for tonight, or at least getting the model ready to start to look at rendering on Thursday, we're going to want to place some more furniture in the space, applying some materials and some light fixtures and things like that. So that'll be kind of homework for Thursday, and I'll repeat that at the end of the class, but pretty much everything we get done today is going to need to be done in the model as well, so just so you know. And then this project is wrapping up rather quickly. It's going to be due on Sunday at midnight, and then next week we're going to jump into AutoCAD for the week and look at how to create a template file for laser cutting, and also how to export parts of this model. Well, we'll use as an example how to export those that stuff and get it into jeez, maybe I should have had coffee this morning. I am frickin' whooped. Okay, at any rate, next week we're going to look at AutoCAD and how to laser cut and export from Revit into AutoCAD in order to laser cut. That's all I got to say about that. Alright, so we're going to start out looking at 3D modeling text, and I'm going to work in my 3D view, and I'm going to use my section box. So if you don't have that turned on in your properties of your 3D view, you should have a little check button here that allows you to select a section box, which creates a box that you can push and pull, to cut through your building, to help you see what's going on inside. So let's just cut that a little bit more. So hopefully everybody has a staircase in their building and these interior walls as well. But we're just going to go ahead and utilize this back wall here to write some text on it. And so I'm going to initially set my working plane by using a pick plane instead of a name of a reference plane. And I'm going to just pick the face of that wall, if I can get it. So even though I picked the lower half of that wall, we're just using it as a work plane, similar to you would be setting a reference plane and then using that as your work plane. But we're going to go ahead and click model text, and it immediately asks me to type some text in. And so I'm just going to type in University of Idaho. Hopefully I spelled that correctly. And you can see it, you can place this on the other side of the wall. Yeah, so we didn't quite get it on the side that we want. However, I can reselect it and go into our modified generic model and pick a new plane, and hopefully why are you messing with me today? Why?
East or west?
Alright, fine. Let's try that one more time. That looks like that works a little bit better. There we go. So I didn't quite have that set right first time, but you can see that it's, get rid of that one, that it is attached to this wall, and we can change the depth of it in the instance properties here to whatever you want, basically. You can also apply a material to it, and you can edit the text here, and you can also edit the alignment. The other cool thing is that we can go in and edit the type properties, and that allows us to change the text font and the size of the font. So whatever fonts you have, like loaded in Word or Illustrator, InDesign, the majority of them show up in here and you can utilize them. You can also download text. I don't know if anybody's gone online to download other text types for other softwares, but once you download and install them, they should appear in here. There are a few instances where I've had a text not work, but the majority of them do. And so you can play around with different texts if you'd like. I would recommend it. And I'm going to use the Bank Gothic, and duplicate it. Make sure you duplicate so that you can go back to the Arial one if you want to. You can see that text has updated, looks different than the Arial. Let's just go ahead and change that back to Arial for the moment, so that we can look at the difference between the two.
I think it's hard to see the difference between the two.
Really? That's hard to see the difference between the two?
I think nobody's that smart.
I had to make two types. Yeah. So at any rate, that's how you utilize 3D text. You can you don't have to have it sit on the work plane, the surface, right? So if you're thinking about doing like a sign awning and you didn't necessarily want it attached to but aligned with the surface, you can always move it up off the surface and maybe make some detail connections between the two. So that's pretty much it when it comes to 3D model text. You just have to set your work plane correct the first time and create your text. And you can left justify it, center justify it, right justify it. You can add more text to this, so you can add whatever you want and it'll put it underneath. So it's just kind of basically like writing in any software. So that's 3D text. We're going to delete this one and let's drag this back out. I don't know, let's put like a cool color on it just for the heck of it. I don't like any of those colors, so I'm going to create a new one. Maybe edit the size, make it a little bit larger. So it's nice and big there across the top. Have we cut sections in the building yet? Let's take a look. I think I cut this section to do my stair stuff. But at any rate, let's cut a section through the building this direction. I love it when stuff works out. Temporary dimensions don't show up. Okay, that's news. I forgot that doesn't happen. But at any rate, you can arrow this around to where you want it. Doesn't look like you can dimension off of it. I think that's grabbing something else. Oh, I take that back. I take that back. I thought it was grabbing one of our reveals in the back, but it's not. So you can set dimension heights to this. Let's see if you can do it from the other. Let's see if we can grab one side of it. Doesn't look like it, but you can at least dimension the height so you can tell where that sits on the wall. That section was drawn really poorly because it doesn't quite come through all the way. At any rate, you guys get the idea. 3D text. Okay, moving on. We're going to now look at how to create decals, which you can use in the building to place imagery on the walls. I'm just going to place an image on this wall up in here somewhere. And we're going to go to the Insert tab and under the Insert tab we have a decal thing here. And if I select it, it brings up decal types. Because I don't have any loaded in, it brings up this dialog box. If you had some loaded in, it would automatically allow you to place a decal that you've already loaded in. So we can create a new decal down here with this little guy with the orange star. And let's just call him U of I people. Say OK. And it brings up some options you have here. This obviously is to grab your source material. I'm going to go to my Architecture 244 in class assignment 5, and let's look at maybe utilizing this image here of some people. And so we can change the transparency of it so that it's not like super bright. We can reduce that to 25%, so we're kind of like seeing through the image, and the wall, the gypsum board of the wall is going to start to come out a little bit in the image. Haven't played around with the luminance, but you could potentially set lighting up. So if you were to if you had placed a television, in your assignment or your project, and you wanted the screen to have an image on it, you could set that up so that it kind of had a glow of a TV, CRT television. So there's a lot of kind of cool things you can do. You can also add a bump pattern, an image file, or just a percentage. That's pretty much all you need to know. Reflectivity, you could create a little reflectivity on it. You can increase the brightness of it. I haven't really played around with what that looks like in a render, but I do know that setting the transparency back a little bit makes it look like it's more attached to whatever you've attached it to. At any rate, we can go ahead and place this thing, and it comes in fairly small, but if you have a fairly large image, pixel wise, you can increase the size of that image fairly easily. So if you're trying to throw paintings on the walls fairly quickly, this is a good tool to do that with. You could also get really nitpicky and do a face-based component and actually draw a frame and place a decal or an image on the frame, and then load that into your project. But this is kind of the quick and dirty way of doing it. So yay, decals. Everybody get excited about those. Why do they make us come to their class this early? Why? Okay. So the next one I want to show is the paint tool. You can utilize this if you've got a surface that your material is not quite applying correctly to, or if you need a floor inside the model, because we've been using a pad, basically a site pad for the first floor, and you could change the material of it, I believe, somewhere. Yeah, in the structure you can start to change the material of it, but it's going to change the material on the exterior as well. And so maybe we want the exterior to be a concrete, but then as you transition inside, maybe that flooring changes. And so if we added another layer to our structure here, that layer would apply to the entire surface, and we don't particularly want that. We want two separate surfaces, and we want them at two separate sizes. And so how do you go about achieving that? Well, we could set up this as a concrete material so that the exterior reads one way. And so I might as well just do that at the moment. And I don't know, let's just do concrete precast and say okay. And of course, that material is tiled really funky, and that's why it looks kind of nasty when you scroll out of it. But we don't want that on the inside, right? So I'm gonna just bring my section box down low enough so that my structure and my floor is not getting in my way. And we can start to divide this surface with the split surface tool here. If we watch this little diagram, gosh, that little video takes a long time. Doesn't really call it justice. But at any rate, we can use, I'm sorry, I picked the wrong surface. There we go. So you have to pick your surface first, and I picked the floor, or the pad. And now I can use my pick line tool to start dividing this surface. See if I can tab through to select the entire thing there. Let's get rid of that one line. And let's get rid of that line. And let's grab the center. The center of that wall, or the center line of that wall, I should say. I'm hitting the caps lock key, it doesn't help. I don't know which one to pick. There we go. Come on. Let's try that one. Nope. So at any rate, we're going to get there someday here. There we go. And now we just use the TR command, which is trim tool, and trim this up. Make sure that all of our lines are connected. And if they don't allow you to select the other one, that typically is an indication that they are connected and trimmed up. So we can hit the check command, and now we can use the paint tool to change the surface color. I'm going to pick this oak flooring for now to demonstrate that. But what I really want to do is go to my manage materials and create a new material for the floor. And I'm going to go ahead and use this floor texture. And hit OK. And now we can go back to our modified tab, and we should find our floor texture in here. And that looks way too small. So we've applied it, and now with having our 3D view on and our material showing, we can now edit the material and see it update kind of in real time now that we have that applied. So want to change if this type of dialog pops up, it's the size X and size Y. Looks like it's in inches, so let's try 48 inches and hit apply. You'll see our floor starts to look a little better. Maybe we want the floorboards running the opposite direction. I don't know. I'm not used to looking at this way. Angle 90 degrees. So if you ever have a material that you've applied, you don't like how it's looking, you don't have to select the material, the element itself, and jump, and then change the material there and edit it. Because what happens is you highlight a particular, you select an element and it turns blue, and then you go to edit the material and you can't see it. So sometimes it's easier to just apply the material first and then go back through the Manage tab to edit the material while looking at it on your element. Okay. I don't really like how that's turning out. We could change it. I'm not going to spend the time to do it though at the moment. But that's how you use the paint tool to start to fix some stuff that you want two materials on one element. So let's look at the dimensioning tool, basically the annotation tool a little bit more. If we go to our site plan, we notice we've got kind of spot elevations here and roof slope symbol, and some text and stuff, and like some text underneath a dimension. So let's just kind of walk through how to get that. So under our annotate ribbon here, we have what's called spot elevations. So if we select that, we can start to pick elevation spots. I guess I didn't draw that too carefully because it's saying you can also go ahead and just move that over a little bit. Probably change the scale of this to maybe a quarter inch. Ooh, quarter inch, a little too big or too small. You can see that the dimensioning, the numbers and stuff change automatically and update with whatever size scale you choose to view it at under. So I think that looks like a better fit. 1 inch equals 10 feet. At any rate, and that spot elevation is always from 0. So you know, right on the that's how the spot elevation works. Pretty straightforward. Spot coordinates allow you to place a specific coordinate. So if you were in a project that needed to know the exact location within your file of where this corner sat, you know, you could do that. And then spot slope lines. If I hover over my roof with it selected, it'll bring up a line that allows you to show what your slope is of your roof. If we were in elevation view or section view, we would have some more options to change this to a triangle format. Yeah, not quite sure what else there is in here, but yeah. So as far as dimensions go, you can start to edit. There's a lot that come kind of standard with the dimension tool, but you could start to edit. I recommend duplicating it, and you could change the dimension line extension, the gap width, thickness, a bunch of stuff. But more importantly, you can change the text size if you want a different size text, and you can also change the unit format. So if we uncheck that, we can start to change how close we want our dimension to be represented. We can also change it to read in different unit types. So if you were creating you know, a machine part or something like that, which you probably would never do in Revit, and you need it, you know, your dimensioning to be like at 1/100th of an inch, or I don't know, like 1,000th of an inch. You could start to do that using these parameters here in the type property of a dimension. You don't need to do that, just showing you that you can do it. And you can create alternate units as well. And the other cool thing is you can click on the dimension itself, and it brings up a dimension text, which allows you to place more text on the dimension line. So if we wanted to put a suffix of offset, you could start to do that, or some text below the line. Or if you wanted to replace the dimension itself with something, with another dimension or text, you can do that as well. And that's by clicking on the dimension itself. Brings up this dialog box. Other things in the annotation ribbon that are useful are the detail lines, the regions, and components. We briefly looked at these when we did our wall section for the stacked wall. If you guys haven't played with these yet, you can basically do more line work over top of things. And you can create different sizes of line work. These come standard with the package, but you can also, under the Manage tab, under Additional Settings, you can start to create line weights, more line weights. These are all the line weights that come with the package, but you can start to edit these or add ones that you want. So if your line weights aren't reading exactly the way that you want them to, you can always make some changes to that. And then pretty much in every object under the edit type, take that back, not in every object, but most objects you can change the line weights to your specific task. Line styles, this is where you can start to add new line styles. So you can see we've got our wide, thin, medium lines and their line colors and their line weights. You can create a new one, and I'm just going to call it blah 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 at the moment. And we could change that line weight to being, you know, anything, and click OK. And if we go back to our annotation and our detail lines, that's in there. So that's how you can create other line types and sizes. So that really helps in detailing out things. You know, if you cut a section through an object and it's not really reading the way that you want it to, you can go ahead and start to manipulate that section through detail regions, filled regions, masking regions, and detail lines, and then also components. So we talked about loading in the detail components, detail items. You kind of have a laundry list of details that come standard, and these are all family types that have parameters set to them, so you can make them bigger, but you can go in and say steel joists and start to get 2D representation of anything that you've drawn to create a 2D detail of that object. Just adding more detail. Insulation we kind of briefly touched on. Revision clouds, you probably won't get into these until you get out of school, but that's good to note where they are. And then obviously text with leader lines. And if you hit enter, it just keeps creating more, but if you click out of in the empty space, it creates it. And similar to our dimension sizing, we can go ahead and start to, they only give you a couple to start with, but you can start to duplicate these and change the way they look. You can change the arrowheads, the type of text. Similar to our 3D text, you have you have your entire stock of texts. So you can really customize and create your own custom text font if you want to for a file or template file. The other nice thing is spell check. I use it all the time. It works great. And then of course, you know, if you want an additional arrow off the other side, you can do that, and then you can also specify where these leader lines that the arrows are attached to start from. So if I had a couple of lines in here, click out of it, you can see that we can start to change where the lines are being cast from here, this tool, and then we could center justify it, right justify it, left justify it. Okay, let's go ahead and cut a section. What's up? What'd I miss?
Oh, when I told him not to type that category.
Not really.
Okay. I just thought and got excited.
Yeah, you won't use these until you get out into practice, ever. Ever. Believe me when I say that. It's not worth talking about in this class. But that's one of those cool features that if you know any other drafting software, it's a pain in the butt to categorize things. At any rate, let's cut a section through here, and we right click it and go to view. You can see that not everything looks that great. We can start to use our detail here to create that fine. But then, you know, we've got our layers and our walls are kind of showing up, and we don't really need to see that much detail, especially in some of the projects that we work on that, you know, they really just want, you know, pochade black walls. And so how do you go about doing that? And so I'm just going to move these up a little bit so they look a little better. So at any rate, we have what's called Visability Graphics for the specific viewport. And so we type VV into, it's a quick key to get to the screen. You can also select it here, Visibility Graphics Overrides, in our properties. And that allows us to turn categories on and off. So if there's specific objects that you don't want to see in your sections or in your site plans or whatever, or if you want to see stuff that you can't see, you can typically turn them on and off. And they have subcategories for a lot of things. So like structural framing, there's an array of stuff that can be turned on and off. But we want to start to edit the cut pattern for all of our walls. So if we scroll over to here and click on here, we can override the pattern that these patterns. So we can click this and we can create a black color and a solid fill pattern here, and what this will do is it'll do that for all of the walls. So you could also, for individual wall types, you can edit the type and you can change the graphic cut pattern here, but that's for that individual wall type. If you have multiple wall types, you don't want to have to do that to every single wall type. And so it makes sense that in your visibility graphics for this particular view that you can start to just do it to all the wall surfaces. So if we go back into our visibility graphics, we can also do that to floors. And roofs. And notice our pad did not change yet. And our ramps didn't change either. You see our ramp still has a cut pattern there, or a blank cut pattern. So, building pads, are they under site? I can't remember. Thanks. last but not least, structure, right? We can start to do it to structure as well. So structural framing can also so that's starting to look more like a detail that we'd want, or a section that we'd want to put on our board. You can also hide section lines, or if you want them to stay there, we can use the little break symbol to go ahead and manipulate them so they're not in our viewport. The other thing we can do is we can start to, if we don't want to see our levels, we can hide them by element or by category by right-clicking on them. And sometimes our patterns, our surface patterns, come up a little bit too dark when you print, and so sometimes it's nice to just override the graphics in the view by element or by category, and that allows us to do, we can half-tone these objects, we can change the projection lines, the surface patterns, so individually if you wanted to change everything to a different surface pattern or color, you could do that. You could make it transparent, change the cut lines, the cut weights, but I like to just use this halftone, and you notice that changed these as well, which is not exactly what we wanted to do, but that one element, yeah, that's right. Half-tone the whole element. But that's the easiest way to do that. And then we can create a filled region and make it solid black, make sure that it's black. And so you can use solid regions to go ahead and manipulate your view to make it look how you want it to look. And so we could also put one here if we wanted to as well, and just not worry about what was happening underneath there. You could also have made it dirt if you wanted to, or gravel. So that's kind of how you do your pochane, and you could even half-tone these wall elements if you wanted to by a specific element. Oh, I didn't want to hide it. Control Z. Sometimes if you don't read what you're doing, you can hide the element overview or override the graphic by element. And you could half-tone that wall as well, so it sits in the background a little bit more and it's not up in your face. Yeah, and so, you know, in theory, if you wanted to start showing some detail of how this connection works between your glue lambs and the other glue lamb, you can do that as well, using your components, or you can start just drawing in some thin detail lines that show a connection plate. You know, with maybe a couple of bolts here or something. So that detail is pretty small, small enough that maybe it's not worth doing, but those little extra details add depth to the drawing a bit and allow you to show more of what you're trying to accomplish inside the building. So now that we have a section, we've got some floor plans set up, we want to print them, right? And so we could just export this view if we wanted to, or print this view. I guess let's talk about this first. So this is kind of like similar to a section box in 3D. It allows you to crop down to specifically what you want to view. So if you had multiple objects drawn in here, which we don't, but if you did, you could start to make this larger to get multiple buildings showing the relationship between each other. Or if you just wanted one building and you wanted to crop out some of that landscape site plan because it's not really needed, you could do that as well. And then down here, there's two buttons that basically say do not crop view at all. So it takes the crop view away, or you can turn it on, and then this shows it or hides it. So you don't necessarily want that crop view around it, so you can go ahead and turn that off. Once you turn it off, you can't select it anymore, so just be aware of that, and if you want to ever change that crop region, you have to turn it back on in the specific view in order to do that. The other thing is you can start to change the names of your levels here. So maybe we want level 1 to read something different. You could change that here. It'll update in your floor plans. It'll update in your ceiling plans. And it'll also update on your sheets when we create them. But let's just say we wanted to print this particular section without having anything, and we just wanted to print it to, anything addition to this. We could go up to File, Print, and you could set it to any particular printer that you want. I like to just use Qt PDF, but you could use Adobe PDF as well. And there's some options, some print range options. We could print the current window, and what that would do is basically print the entire viewport. So if you have other elements in the viewport, it's going to want to associate that with the print view, and it's going to make your print view giant. And sometimes what you actually want printed will be off the page because you've got multiple objects in the same viewport. If you use visible portion of current window, it typically tries to print exactly what's in the window here that's represented. It also helps to have the crop view on but not showing, so that it's only looking at whatever you have centered in the crop view. So once you kind of establish which one of these you want to use, you could also do select by view or sheet, and that allows you to select any of these views basically. And if we had sheets set up, you could select sheets as well, and you can check a bunch of them and save it so that you don't have to repeat this process over and over again if you want to print a specific set of drawings. But if you don't want a set of drawings and you just want this one viewport, we can use visible portion of current window, and we can click, then we have to kind of set up the actual settings. So you do that by clicking on the setting default setup, and it allows you to select your paper size, So you have your standard arch size papers, 11 by 17, 8.5 by 11. Now, whatever scale you have your viewport set at, it'll print your document at that viewport setting. But you have to click on zoom to 100%. And what that's saying is it's printing at 100% of 8/8 inch equals a foot. And then we want to center it to make sure that it's centered on the piece of paper. And then obviously portrait, landscape, vector processing versus raster processing. You guys know the difference between those two. Okay, so vector processing basically is for line work, and it doesn't pixelate. It actually creates a vector, a line, a point from point A to point B, whereas raster works in pixels. And so if you print your black and whites line work in raster format, it'll be a pixelated line, versus a vector processing, it won't be pixelated. It'll be an actual line that when you zoom in on it, it never gets fuzzy. And when you import that, say open it up in Illustrator, which we'll look at in a few weeks. I don't know if everyone's taking 243 or not, but we'll get into Illustrator. You can select lines, whole lines, and you can start to manipulate them even further in another software. So typically when you're printing black and white, drafting views, you want to use vector processing. If you're printing something that has color, like a render, like after we render something and then do some photoshopping and then put it back on a sheet set, right, inside our software, we want to use raster processing to process that. And it won't actually let you do vector processing for a rendered image. But at any rate, that's kind of the brief difference between the two. And then obviously you can start to change the appearance. So you can click on presentation to get a crisper look for your raster images, and then also grayscale versus black lines versus color. I wouldn't mess with these options too much. I don't think in my how many years 8 years I've been working with Revit, I've never unchecked or checked any of these options down here. I just wouldn't even mess with them. So once you have this kind of established and you know your paper size for the rest of your prints, you could do a save as, so that the default then comes up to your settings here. Or if you want to do that manually every time, you can do that. Okay? And so typically in the current, when you have these two options, you can look at a preview of the drawing to see how that's looking. It's not really printing how I'd want it to print, because you know our level lines are getting cut off, and so maybe we need a bigger paper size if we want to stick with 1/8 inch. 1/8 inch equals a foot scale for our drawing size. But I'm not really concerned about it. And I don't know why that didn't stay. Did I do that again? I don't know.
When you did your view portion window, it was outside, so it automatically moved it in.
Okay.
Crop version.
Yeah. So, and if you don't want to see, you know, these lines, you can always hide them. Right? We can always hide these by category, and that gets rid of those. Same with our level lines. If you ever want to get them back, this little light bulb basically turns on a view that allows you to see what's actually hidden in this view. And so what's in pink or red or whatever color you want to call this, that's what's hidden. And so we can go ahead and unhide by category and unhide by category, and now we have those back again. Okay, so let's just double check and make sure I didn't miss anything in here. Yeah, for now, because we're only looking at this specific viewport and we're only printing that viewport, it selects the file type of combining the multiple views to print to one sheet set or a single file. If you had multiple sheets selected, you would have the option to separate those out if you wanted to, or print them in one file. This one creates a lot of files. This top one doesn't. I like the single file personally. So let's look at how we can create sheet sets. So down here we have a line that says sheets. We can go ahead and right click that and we can create a new sheet. And automatically it wants us to use a title block or create a title block, and its standard kind of gives us this arc E 30 by 42 horizontal title block. You can just go ahead for now, whoops, and hit OK, and basically it creates this is like the custom Autodesk title block, and I used this in my file, but I changed some stuff. And so if you double click it, it opens up the family. So it's a family similar to any other family we've created, and we can start to manipulate this. You want to be careful about manipulating these things. You can change the text type, similar to changing the text type, but as far as deleting them and trying to do something else, you could change the size of them obviously, but they're actually parameters. So we're not going to get into creating too much detail, but we just want to kind of manipulate this one to look fairly custom. Maybe we don't necessarily need all these consultants in here. We could probably delete those. And we want to get rid of anything that kind of says Autodesk on it, right? And again, we could go into our Insert tab and load in, say, like an image, University of Idaho insignia, and place that here in place of the Revit, or the Autodesk insignia. And we don't necessarily need a timestamp, which is down here, which basically says what day this particular sheet was created. We don't really need that. But all this stuff is kind of parameterized. And so if we load this back into our project, you may just want to do a save as and rename it, a new family type. Just so that it's not overwriting the original family type. We can load that back into our project and go back to our first sheet and we can change our title block. Okay, and so these are all kind of parameters down here. We could go ahead and click on them individually and change them. So owner, I don't know, me. Project name, U of I Cultural Center. This unnamed is associated with the actual view, so we could change that here and it would update here. We could also right click this and rename it and change the sheet number, which would update this as well. Or I don't know, we can just say architectural floor 1, and notice they both update. In our manage tab under project information, you'll notice that the client name says me. That's because I changed it here. So you could also change it under the project properties as well. And you could also put in an address, and I'm pretty sure it'll pop up here. And the project name shows up in here and the project number. So maybe this is 1401 because it's 2014 and it's our first project. And you can see down in here in project number that updated as well. So there are multiple places where you could update these parameters. And so let's go ahead and drag our floor plan onto this sheet. And so in order to get it on here, we could just select our level 1 and drag it in. And notice it also drags that image, which we don't particularly want. So we can double click, and now we're inside our level 1 viewport. We could hide this, right, by right clicking and say hide element. We can also use it's not on our crop region here to crop it out. And if you right click anywhere, you can deactivate the view. Oops, I forgot to turn it on. And then we can hide it, deactivate the view. And if you select the view itself, you can move this thing around, and you'll notice that this leader line that has our level 1 name and our scale on it, but we can't necessarily move it around. What we can do is select it individually from our viewport selection, and then you can start to move it around. You can also you have to have the viewport selected in order to change the size of it, which is kind of weird. But by selecting it, you can move it around. And it'll lock to certain things, so if you have multiple ones on the same page, you can start to align them. And, well, how else could I make this more boring? We can also edit the viewport view options with our edit type. And again, you'd want to duplicate it so that you're not overwriting the template. But you can change whether you want to see a title, whether you want to show it at all. can change its line weight. Showing the extension line, you can change the color of it. You can get freaky with it there, changing the color. And line pattern, you can also change the line pattern as well. Super fun stuff. So we've got this one sheet selected, or we've got this one sheet, we want to print it. We can go up to our print properties and we can select the select view sheet, and we can now select this specific sheet and click OK. It's going to ask me if I want to save it as a default. Not really, it's only one sheet. But then in the setup, we want to go in and change it to the correct paper size. I believe it was Arch E1, but you could use Arch E as well. And again, zoom to 100%, centered. We don't necessarily need it colored. We could do grayscale or black lines. Click OK. I don't really want to save this either as a particular setting. But notice we don't have a print preview anymore. And so the reason why you don't have a print preview is because you can't really manipulate. There's no reason to have one, because it's going to recognize this title block and the sheet size, and it's going to print exactly how it looks. All your scales and things. And also it gives you the option to create separate files or combine multiple files when you're using the select sheet viewport. So I'm not going to print, but it would just prompt you to save as a PDF, and then you can utilize that any way you want. So we have like 2 minutes left. I just want to show you one quick thing. Let's place a light really quickly. I'm going to go ahead and insert load a family, and I'm going to go to lighting, architecture, internal, and I'm going to grab a scone light flat round, and I'm going to place one real quick here. Maybe. And I just want to show you briefly kind of the parameters and what you can start to change. I know we're out of time, but these are all things that kind of need to be put into the project so that we can start to render on Thursday and get a final product out. So under our lighting type properties, you could duplicate, rename, right? And then we can start to change the initial color of the light itself. Right now it's an incandescent light. Typically the fluorescent daylight works the best out of all of these. I've kind of tried them all, and you can see that kind of what the difference between those lights are through this little viewport, and it kind of already sets the temperature of your light up. You don't really want to change the light loss factor at all, but if you want to change the color of the light, so now that we've actually created, you know, a daylight that looks pretty realistic, right? We can then put a filter on it under the color filter, and you can start to change the color of that white light to something else. So it'd be the similar of having a white light bulb and putting a transparent color over that light bulb, so it shines whatever, green, purple, yellow, turquoise, whatever color you want. So that is basically it. So for Thursday, it'd be nice to have your sheets set up so that come Sunday night when you want to print and submit them, you already have them set up. Go ahead and change the names of your sheets to read, you know, appropriately: architectural, floor plan, site plan, etc. Insert some lights so that we can set up some render settings on Thursday. You know, get some 3D text in the file, a decal in the file. Start adding some dimensions. You don't have to add as many dimensions as I have on my sheet sets, but I want to know that you guys know how to use that stuff. So have those updated at some point. And same with the section, you know, make it look similar to mine. And again, add some lights so we can set up a night render on Thursday. And the exterior lights too, those 4 or 5 exterior lights.
Anybody not sign in?
There's my cue.
Nice.
What's that?
You're Hunter, right?
Yep.